All right, welcome to this explainer. I am so thrilled you're here with us today because we're looking at one of the absolute most famous pieces of literature in human history, Genesis chapter 2. But we're doing it through a very specific lens. We're not getting bogged down in theological debates today. Instead, we're going to look at this as a brilliantly structured ancient text that is fundamentally built around solving a really fascinating series of problems. We're going to see how the narrative constructs this initial state of the world, identifies exactly what's missing, and then systematically goes about filling those voids. It's honestly a masterpiece of ancient storytelling. And the way it builds from absolute emptiness to profound human connection, well, it's something that still resonates deeply with us today. So let's get right into it.
Just listen to this central conflict for a second. It is not good that the man should be alone. In a narrative where literally everything has been meticulously crafted and perfectly ordered, this is a glaring, massive problem. It's like a record scratch. The text just stops dead in its tracks to point out a fundamental flaw in the current design, which is isolation. But before we can fully appreciate how the narrative actually resolves this ultimate tension, we need to understand the stakes. We've got to jump back in time to the very beginning of this excerpt to see exactly how we ended up at this moment of profound loneliness.
To do that, we move to section 1, setting the barren scene.
Okay, let's dive into this. The ancient author slows right down here, meticulously stripping away everything we know about the vibrant living world, forcing us to picture an environment that is completely and utterly empty. First, we have the void of the early earth. The text explicitly tells us there is no bush, no small plant, no rain, and crucially, no man to work the ground. It's a completely dormant landscape. There's potential, sure, but there's absolutely no action. But then, the catalyst arrives. A mist goes up from the land, watering the whole face of the ground. The soil is being prepped, the canvas is being primed. This barren scene is finally ready for the text's first major intervention.
And that brings us to section 2, breath and the dust. So the text presented a problem, untilled, unworked ground. And now it presents its very first major solution, the creation of a human to actually work it. And the way this is described is incredibly tactile. It acts as a clear, sequential recipe for life. Step 1, the man is formed directly from the dust of the ground. By the way, the Hebrew wordplay here is just beautiful, directly connecting Adam, the man, with Adamah, the ground. Step 2, the divine breathes the breath of life directly into his nostrils. It's this deeply intimate physical act. And step 3, the man becomes a living creature. We've literally moved from a sterile, unwatered dust bowl to a breathing, living being who is intrinsically tied to the earth he was made from. But you can't just have a living creature wandering around a barren mudscape. The immediate solution to the barren earth is completed by placing this newly formed living creature into a specifically planted environment. The text says God planted a garden in Eden, in the east, and put the man there. The man has a home. He has a purpose. The physical problem of the untilled earth has been completely resolved. Which brings us to section 3, the first problem. Just when you think the narrative has reached the state of perfect equilibrium, a sudden narrative tension is introduced. The physical world is sorted, right? But the internal, relational world of this new creature is deeply lacking. Despite the lush garden, despite the breath of life, the text identifies a critical error. The isolation of the man is explicitly labeled as not good. And this prompts a divine search for a compatible partner. The stated goal is super clear. I will make him a helper fit for him. Now, the word helper here doesn't mean like an assistant or an intern. In the ancient context, it implies a rescuer, a counterpart, a vital strength that the man is currently lacking. And so the search begins in earnest. And it happens fast. The text shows us a massive parade of animals. Every beast of the field formed from the ground, every bird of the heavens formed from the ground. All of them are brought before the man to see what he would call them. It's this exhaustive, almost comical cataloging of the natural world. A total flurry of absolute activity, all in an attempt to find that one perfect counterpart. During this whole process, the man plays an incredibly active role. He isn't just passively sitting there waiting around. He is observing, categorizing, and naming. The text notes that whatever the man called every living creature, that was its name. He's asserting order, building a relationship with his environment, and actively examining every single creature that passes by him in this grand procession. So the crucial point is that despite all of this exhaustive effort, this first attempt at a solution fails completely. The text drops this heavy realization on us. But for Adam, there was not found a helper fit for him. The animals are great, they are named, they are part of the order, but they are absolutely not his equal. The problem of isolation remains totally unresolved. The narrative tension right here is at its absolute peak. Which leads us perfectly into section 4, the ultimate connection.
We are going to slow the pacing down significantly here for this deeply mysterious sequence. The text moves from that fast-paced parade of animals into a highly poetic, deeply physical process for this ultimate solution, relying heavily on visceral, tactile details. Step 1. A deep, almost anesthetic sleep falls on the man. Step 2. A piece of his very core, one of his ribs, is taken out. Step 3, the place is closed up with flesh, kind of like a divine surgery leaving no trace but the absence of the bone itself. And finally, step 4, that rib is meticulously crafted and made into a woman. Unlike the man who was made from the dirt, she is actually made from the man himself.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the direct etymological and poetic logic the text uses to intertwine these two beings. The man names her woman, which in Hebrew is Aisha, specifically because she was taken out of man, ish. The very language used to describe them is built out of the exact same root, perfectly mirroring the physical reality that they share the exact same substance. When the man finally wakes up and sees her, the isolation is broken. He breaks into the very first recorded poetry in the text, declaring, "This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." You can just feel the genuine, palpable relief and joy in this statement, right? The long search is over. The not good state of loneliness has been totally shattered by the arrival of an equal, a true counterpart, made of the exact same stuff. It is a joyful, triumphant resolution to the narrative's absolute biggest problem. But here's the thing. The text doesn't just end with this ancient triumph. It elegantly shifts gears. It moves from a highly specific, mythological creation event into a foundational explanation for ongoing human behavior. It says, "Therefore a man leaves his father and his mother and holds fast to his wife." The ancient author is essentially telling the reader, hey, this story isn't just about the past. It is the fundamental reason why human beings act the way they do right now.
And this brilliantly illustrates why this matters today, establishing the literary motif of human longing and the origins of partnership. They shall become one flesh. The narrative argues that the intense drive for human connection, the desire to find a partner and cleave to them, is actually an attempt to return to that original state of unity. It is such a profound way to explain why relationships matter so deeply to us. We are fundamentally wired, according to this ancient text, to seek out the pieces of ourselves in another.
Which leaves us with this final thought. We've seen how Genesis 2 structures its narrative, moving from a barren wasteland to a solitary man, and finally to a profound intertwined partnership. But my question for you is this. How does this ancient transition from solitary dust to an intertwined humanity change the way we view our own need for connection today? Does seeing our modern desire for partnership reflected in such an ancient, meticulously structured mirror change the way you value your own relationships? Think on that. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring.